Imam, Dan, thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, Greta.
Thank you very much for having us.
Tough time here in this community.
No, it is.
Do you know the man who is Mateen?
Alhamdulillah, the person known as Mateen, there's been reports saying that he was a student of mine. That's totally not true. He never registered at our school. He never took classes at our school. I don't know him, never met him. Those things are totally unfounded.
Has he never been to your school?
No, never. We're an online institution. So we don't have face-to-face classes, but we do meet all our students online.
So even if he were online, you would know him?
Yes, because we do face-to-faces.
Dan, have you learned anything to the contrary?
To my knowledge, Greta, there is absolutely no evidence that Mr. Mateen was associated with my client, was acquainted with him, was a student of his, or for that matter, ever met him. To the extent that he was a follower of my client, that's completely without our knowledge.
Mateen, why is it people are saying that, do you think? Or not Mateen, I'm sorry, Imam. Imam. Why are people saying that?
You know, there's been a false report. Someone erroneously put it out there that Umar Mateen was a follower of Timbuktu Seminary. I'm the main teacher at Timbuktu Seminary, and people say these things. However, even they went so far to say that I was arrested and my companions were rounded up, and that was untrue either. We haven't had any problems. We've been going on doing business as usual. What we do teach is Quran. We don't teach paramilitary training or anything like that. We don't deal with politics either.
What is Timbuktu Seminary?
Timbuktu Seminary is an idea I had since childhood. Timbuktu was one of the oldest universities in Africa. And it has an Afro-Islamic heritage. Being an African and being Muslim, we wanted to bring that name back into providence amongst the people. What it is an online institute where we teach Quran, we teach Arabic, and we teach the Islamic sciences. We call them the usul.
Is there anything in your school and your online that is in any way something that would preach violence?
No, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen. No, we don't preach violence at all. The good thing about the government being heightened about terrorism, we're monitored. We're monitored 24/7. So all of our classes are taped. The FBI has a direct line to us. They even come in and get involved. Just recently they came and got involved with someone they felt was a strange person at our mosque. So we're constantly watching out for the same things.
Dan, is he being watched at all times by the FBI, do you think?
I believe so. I believe that for years he's been watched by the FBI, going back to 2011 at least, if not before. And since his release from incarceration last year, I believe the FBI has their eye on him 24/7.
Has the FBI ever contacted you about him?
They have not, and as a matter of fact, I deal very frequently with the prosecutors who were involved in his case, and they don't talk about him whatsoever.
Imam, tell me a little bit about the Quran. What does it preach or speak to or say about gays?
Alhamdulillah. The Quran is the book of Allah, or the book of God, if you'd like to say. And it's the last revelation in a compilation of revelations. The first coming of revelation would be in the Torah, what we have of the Torah, and then you have the Injil, which we call the Gospel. And so if we call the Gospel, was it the New Testament, then the Quran could be called the Last Testament, because it's the last time Allah, what we call, is going to deal with people with words. So in it is a compilation of everything all the other prophets came with, and we as Muslims believe in all the other prophets from Adam, including Jesus. Everything that they came with that is pertinent for us to know, from Adam all the way to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as for gays, it does speak about gays. In fact, but it doesn't say anything different than what the Bible says about gays. It speaks about the story of Lut. وَلُوتًا إِذْ قَالَ لِقَوْمِهِ. He says, and Lut, when he said to his people, أَتَأْتُونَ الْفَاحِشَةَ مَا سَبَقَكُم مِّنْ أَحَدٍ مِّنَ الْعَالَمِينَ. It says, are you going to do some type of lewd behavior that no one else has preceded you in out of all the people? And so this is the beginning of the story of Lut, or Lot, as we say in English, and it talks about how Allah had that place of earth picked up and slammed back on top of itself, and that area we call the Dead Sea area now is destroyed. That's what the Quran says, and we don't find it any different than any other religion. It really is strange that people blame Muslims for their position against homosexuality when it's the exact same position as Christianity and Judaism.
Tell me what the Quran says, though, specifically about whether there should be any punishment for gay conduct. Does it say anything about that?
Well, see, we have two things in what we call Islamic law. We have the Quran and we have the Sunnah. Okay? The Sunnah is what we call the precedences. So the Quran would be our constitution, our dustur. And so with the precedences, we learn how to apply what comes in general in the Quran. So yes, there's punishment, but there's another thing that you have to take into consideration. And all Muslims learn this from their teacher, from their imams and their scholars, that as Muslim minorities in the United States, we're not authorized to apply Islamic law in the United States or any Muslim or non-Muslim country. And even in a Muslim country, they have authority. And those people who have authority, that's when it's applied. But you find homosexuality in the Muslim countries. It's embarrassing to say, as our religion says not to have it, but there's homosexuality. In Afghanistan, it's well known for having homosexuality there. So, you know, we say that, but the law is not really applied in any of the Muslim countries. Well,
you see pictures, though, of gay men being pushed off buildings. Especially you see that in Iran, and I realize it's a Shiite country, but you see that.
Like you said, and what happens in Iran, we've had like a brick wall against going into Iran and dealing with that. I don't know what they do in Iran, but I do know that homosexuality is something that's practiced in a lot of different countries, and lots of people stand up against homosexuality. However, what we preach in the United States is that it is not proper for any Muslim to take the law, or the Islamic law at that, into his own hands. And I personally don't think that this person was going to that club to cleanse them or to kill them because they were homosexualities. From what I understand, he was a constant person there, right? He was going there for 3 years. So I doubt he had a problem with that. Even one of the people said they knew him there and that they had seen him getting kicked out for being drunk. Well, drinking is the type of crime as having homosexual relationships. So I doubt that he went there for something. Maybe he had a problem with his lover or something like that, because I heard that his wife said that he was gay and his father had called him gay in front of her. I don't know. But I do know is that whatever he did, he didn't do it on behalf of Islam.
So you disavow him. You disavow him of being a devout Muslim.
I disavow the concept of anyone taking the law into their own hands. That's a terrible thing that happened to those people. 50 people getting killed, 50 other people getting shot. Islam doesn't, no one can justify that with Islam, not using just Islam. There's no Islamic justification for that. We can't even slap people in the face in Islam. You know, there are laws and there's rules. So, and that's as a parent, let alone as a lawgiver. The person was sick. The people who, or the persons, because I also heard that one of the guy that got shot 12 times said that they were 4 shooters. So I'm sure they're still doing their investigation. But from what I see, whoever did that, if they're trying to say they did it for ISIS or they did it for Islam, that is not true. Islam does not stand for that. I don't know about ISIS.
Well, how do you account for, what's your theory on why he was close to the first American who went over and was a bomber in Syria, a suicide bomber? What's your theory on that?
You know, personally, it's very hard to interrogate a dead person. You know, we hear about these suicide bombings. I personally don't believe that all those guys are suicide bombings. That's my personal view.
What do you think they are?
I don't know. They're dead. We can't tell. You know, I mean, I have different politics in that. I believe that those people get blown up and it helps our policy to say that they were blowing up something. But, you know, I don't know. Islam doesn't promote that. So, you see, I have a problem when someone says Muslims are doing something, but they're doing something un-Islamic and they say they're doing it for Islam. That's schizophrenia. So that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, what do you mean? You have to admit that there's an awful lot of terrorism associated with Islam, right or wrong?
I do not agree. I beg to differ. Right. I'll tell you why. The term terrorism is not agreed upon term internationally, number one. Number two, I don't know what has happened in most of the cases. I don't believe the media most of the times, personally, because there's a lot of sensationalization. Look what they get. Some person went out there and said that I was arrested and rounded up and that I was teaching this guy. That was total blatant lie. So what can we believe? Bush said what? There were weapons of mass destruction. We never found no weapons of mass destruction. How are we going to say we're going to believe something that's constantly being told us a lie? I don't know what those people did. I know there's a lot of crimes out there. When that guy went into the Joker, and shot all those people, they didn't say it was an act of terrorism. It was the same crime.
Yeah, the Aurora, Colorado.
Right.
Good.
You know, so when do we label it terrorism and when do we don't? When a white guy who's a Christian runs into a bank and robs the place, they don't go hunt down his preacher. Okay? They don't even mention that he's Christian.
Well, I guess the problem is that many times it's reported that they say things like Allah. I mean, go to Paris, back November 13.
Right.
I mean, things that were, say, Allah Akbar is said. I mean, so it does, I mean, it certainly does lead to a suggestion it's connected to radical Islam.
I'd like to agree with you, but since when we use terms that are not definable, when you say radical, we disagree about what's radical.
Well, what happened in Paris? How do you describe that?
I don't know about, again, Paris, those particular things, but I'm talking about the term radical. Radical is what the one guy calls the other guy.
Okay, got it.
Right?
All right, I got your distinction, but all right. What happened in Paris? How do you describe that? What is that?
Again, I don't know. I'm not Parisian, but I do know this, that there is a heavy-handed approach when it comes to Muslims. Are there some sick people out there? There are sick people out there. They may be Muslim, they may be Christian, they may be Jew, but we always focus on the fact that these ones are Muslim.
But there appears. I mean, I think most people would agree that there was a network of people in Paris and again in Belgium that it looks, that it's certainly something, not just a sick person. It's a network that is inflicting violence.
Again, I'm Republican when it comes to those types of things. I believe that we should focus on the United States because we have enough problems. So I really don't pay attention to people in Paris or those other countries. We have our own problems here. So I don't know what happened there. If there was a network, I'll take your word for it. There are people that, I'm not saying there aren't Muslims that are trying to kill people sometimes, some places. Just like I believe that there are some Christians and some Jewish people doing the same thing. What I'm saying is, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not negating that. What I'm saying is that we seem only to focus on the ones that are Muslim, and we don't use that same approach when it's others who are doing that and that are not Muslim. That's all I'm saying.
So you would not assign this Mateen slaughter?
Oh, no. I would say this about Omar Mateen, about this situation here.
Right.
I would wait until the investigation and those who are investigating it came out with a word. Because what happens is, look at we're getting so much hate mail, and we have nothing to do with the guy.
That means at your school.
Right.
Okay. All right, but if it turns out.
So, but I'm saying that to say that that's because someone jumped the gun. We call people terrorists, but then we terrorize other people. As a Negro American, I can't tell you how many people told me while they sit in their car and the police come behind them, how scared and terrorized we are, thinking they might pull us over and kill us. That's terrorism. When a Muslim is scared because he's Muslim, he might get picked up and detained, and the people on the newspaper say, well, we have to do with these animals, these savages. And we're not animals and savages. So they paint with a big, heavy brush when it comes to Islam. Don't you see that?
I understand what you're saying, and I think there's radical and I think there's non-radical Islam. And when you're killing in the name of Islam, I think you're radical.
But when we're killing in the name of democracy, we're not?
Well, that's, I mean, do you want, and so specifically what?
Oh, look at what happened in Iraq. When Marion Albright was there, over 100,000 children were killed. And then when they asked her at the UN, does she think that this is worth it? And she said, I think it's good because it's going to encourage the people to get rid of Saddam. So we kill 150,000 children. So is
this quid pro quo? Is that how you justify it?
No, justify what? What am I justifying? I'm not justifying anything. I'm asking you, because based on your statement, that is it those people are extremists when they kill in the name of Islam. And I'm saying those people are extremists when they kill in the name of democracy or anything that is not proper. Killing
and the point is what? The
point is that most of the killing is done political. And it has little to do with the basic man on the street who is dying.
All right, well, the basic man on the street, Mateen, is the one who went into that nightclub and slaughtered 49 people.
Mateen is a police officer. He's not a basic man on the team. He went to the police academy at Indian River Community College.
So you say he's a police officer?
He graduated from the police academy. What do you call that?
First of all, I mean, if it turns out that he's online reading radical stuff and associated with
Reading radical stuff? What's radical? Who are we to determine what? Don't we have the freedom of
if
the
he's
press?
reading, okay, how about this? If he's reading hate stuff, how about that?
So what? What a person does and reads in his own home is their own business. This is the United States.
It's
Are
not
those
his,
rights
it's not,
for us or
no,
not
no,
for
it's,
us?
it's not his business if he takes that hate and then goes into a club
That's
and
when
slaughters 49 people.
You're 100% right. When he makes that, see, I'm 100% agreeing with you. When they take that hate and they make that step, that overture to become aggressive to other people, then we should intervene. Like we see the KKK, we see the skinheads.
It's a little late after 49 people have been slaughtered.
Okay.
It's a little late.
And like I said, we seem to always, and I'm not saying, let me make it clear, I'm not backing up Umar Mateen or anybody who had anything to do with those killing or those slaughtering the people. What I'm saying is that we need to spend that same amount of effort when other people are getting killed, because we don't see us standing up against the Ku Klux Klan and the skinheads.
They're standing up against it.
they're
Absolutely,
not.
certainly
they're
they are.
not. Well, I don't hear you I've seen no program of yours where you stated, and I watch your program, where you stated that, hey, we should stop them from reading the radical materials they read in their homes.
It's not reading the radical materials.
Okay, then we agree then.
No, it's reading hate, adopting hate, having hate your fuel, and going out and slaughtering 49 people.
I'm with you.
Okay, all right.
I'm 100% with you.
That's the problem.
We are together.
And the problem is that there's an awful lot of hate out there, and we saw it in Paris. We saw it in Charlie Hebdo in Paris. We saw it in Belgium. We saw it at Fort Hood. There are a lot of instances where people seem to be very devout, and I would say radical Islam.
Not devout.
Okay, not devout.
See,
all right,
that's
right. All right, I'll give you that one. Radical Islam. Using
I don't say
Islam.
radical Islam,
Well,
no.
what's fueling this? It's just a coincidence?
No, it's not a coincidence.
Well, then why are all these people in the name of Islam are taking?
We don't know that because they're dead.
Taking Egypt Airline down and saying Allah's good. What about that? Is it just a coincidence?
You know, when America went over to go fight in Iraq War, we heard the generals talking about this is the fifth crusade. Okay,
right.
no, let's.
But wait, you won't answer my question.
I'm answering
okay.
it. I'm just taking a backward street.
Okay.
You know, no, we find what I'm trying to show is we have a dualistic approach to these particular issues. Number one, a devout Muslim is someone who practices the basic precepts of Islam. Okay.
And let me just say, in terms of basic precepts,
the 5 things.
Okay, no, but I mean, is there any justified killing in like?
No. ولا تقتلوا النفس التي حرم الله إلا بالحق. It says in the Quran, it says, and you're not allowed to take the soul, to kill the person, an individual, for any reason,
so
except when you have authority.
Right.
Infidels is a word used by the Catholics against the Muslims. The first one to use it was the first Pope. So infidels is not an
non-Muslim. Non-Muslim. Any right to kill a non-Muslim ever?
Yes, you have a right to kill a non-Muslim. When he's trying to kill you.
Okay, self-defense. Any other reason to kill a non-Muslim?
Normally, no. No. I can see one. I can see not. Because normally the non-Muslims are protected in the Muslim lands. I should say it again. Normally non-Muslims, when they're in the lands of the Muslims, are protected individuals, dhimmis. We see that when the Muslims had their government, like in Andalusia, the Jews and Christians were their places of worship were protected. Okay, and even Jews.
When I read these stories about women being stoned to death for adultery, is it all made up?
Well, nowadays it's not, but it used to be.
Let's
go back 5 years though.
How about now though? I mean, I'm curious. I mean, I see that in the last year or two. What does that mean?
I'll show you this.
Okay.
No, it used to be the fact that no one, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, no one was ever stoned to death except they came themselves and what they call it, testified against themselves 4 times. No one has ever been caught and convicted of that crime. They've all testified in themselves. Now, recently, in the last 5 years, when you have ISIS and these things going on, we start seeing these cliche pictures of these things happening. I can't explain that, but I can tell you.
Do you disavow it? I mean, do you condemn it?
No, because I don't know the situation.
Okay, let me just ask you this hypothetically. Do you condemn stoning a woman to death for adultery?
No, I do not condemn that.
Why not?
Do you condemn someone getting to electric chair for whatever crime they get the electric chair for?
So you think adultery for a woman is a death penalty offense?
Not just a woman. Why do you want to specify a woman?
Because I see the women being stoned to death, and I don't see the men. Are they stoning the men to death?
Well,
are they?
I don't know.
Okay, I see. The only thing I see, and I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but I see the women getting stoned to death for adultery. And I don't see the men getting stoned to death.
This is unfair. You know, I do. If that was the case, I would agree with you that this would be a biased type of approach. What I do not condemn is the concept that stoning is an inappropriate punishment for adultery, because we find in the Quran and in the Sunnah that we stone for a person who is an adulterer, meaning has been married. However, I don't think that we have a foot to stand on when we Americans talk about the death penalty, when we also implement the death penalty.
I guess the other thing too is, I guess in Islam, a man can have more than one.
Still, adultery is adultery. A man should be stoned.
A man can have more than one wife, but a wife can't have more than one husband, right?
Of course not. But still.
What do you mean, of course not?
Of course not. It's not natural.
Well, frankly, I mean, that's again the question relatively. I think having more than one spouse is not natural, but you think otherwise. That's your culture.
Well, normally we find that it's not just my culture. America has
other
plural
cultures
marriage.
do.
No, America has plural marriage in the United States. They just don't call it the same thing we call it. The guys, I grew up in an Italian Jewish neighborhood. Half the Italian guys saw their guma every Friday, and the wife knew. They had their girlfriend. They talk about their baby daddy. We have it.
But you didn't stone the girlfriend.
No,
the dad?
No, they don't. But I'm saying that's like a marriage. They have a home for this lady. They say 1 out of every 5 children in England is from adultery. So Islam.
I don't know where you get that number, but
I mean, they have the census. I mean, Sheikh Google.
I mean, I'm not disavowing. I'm just saying I have no way to combat that number.
Right. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'll say it like this then. We do have a system that's similar where a man has more than one woman. They just don't get married. Marriage gives the lady some respect and some honor, and it restricts it from just going out and having all this stuff they're doing.
What do you think of ISIS and al-Baghdadi?
Okay. I don't know al-Baghdadi. I've just been out of jail for 1 year, and I've been really focused on me. Okay? However, what I have looked at ISIS, this particular group, and I noticed that there was another group that was there that took the country, right? And then when they took the country, this group ISIS came and they disbanded that group, destroyed the leadership, and then they started another group. I said, wow, that's smart international law. Because if they would have kept the same group, then they would have been labeled a terrorist organization. So when they first started ISIS, it should not have been labeled a terrorist organization, and it wasn't. Then after they started to do what they considered war crimes, then it was labeled a terrorist organization. I say that they need to investigate those particular incidences, what they say are terrorism, in order to clearly state these people are terrorist organization. If proven, then we're against them too. But what I say again is I do not trust the people who are giving me the information, because it's the same people who told me that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. So I would have to say that I would defer to the International War Criminals Court to investigate that and state what they are.
Right. So when they behead James Foley, a journalist, your thought is what?
I believe some journalists need to be beheaded, but I wouldn't have done that.
You believe some journalists need to be beheaded?
I only say that facetiously.
Okay.
In a
so
way.
How can you in any way justify ISIS?
I'm not justifying.
Okay.
I'm not justifying it. I was just stating that no, I don't justify any of their activities, and no, I don't think that.
Shouldn't we stop them?
No. Why would
because they're beheading people, beheading Americans?
Okay, don't we have our own problems here?
Yeah, we got problems here, but
okay. So is it our business?
Well, apparently, some of those problems are being imported here.
Only because I think that because we feed into this and we grow it here. You know what? Majority of these cases, I'm saying from my experience. Okay, what I have seen, majority of these homeland terrorist cases are instigated by FBI undercovers. Did you know that?
That's what you think it is. You think
I think a lot of it. I didn't say all of it. But is that fair to say? And when we look at these cases, we find that majority of them, they started, even the guys get their weapons and stuff from FBI agents.
Tell me when.
I'll give you an example. That was up in Connecticut. Those three guys, they came out of jail. They didn't have any money. They were going to the mosque. And a Pakistani guy who had his own company where he was doing taxes and real estate. He got in trouble. The government said, the FBI said, we want you to catch somebody. So get off this 6 months that you might have to do in jail. He went there, told them he was from the Islamic army. He recruited them. They told him they had to do another crime to prove themselves to the Islamic army. They said, we don't have any guns. He went back to the FBI. The FBI gave them guns. They made a quick trade off. They didn't have the money. They gave him the money. They didn't have a car. They gave him the car. And this is a case. This is an actual case.
So you think the FBI is behind the terrorism there?
No, I don't think the FBI is behind.
They're breeding it?
I think that they are promoting it. And see, this young generation that's coming up, they are very impressionable. And I think that the things that we do, how is it that you can get online and see these things, and we can control what comes in on the internet? You know, how is it that ISIS has a Twitter account?
Well, so should it be shut down?
Why isn't it?
No, I'm saying, would you shut down ISIS Twitter account?
Sure. If they're a terrorist organization and the international community has stated they're a terrorist organization, then they should have a Twitter account. There shouldn't be a website that we can go to. You know, when you go to some countries, there are certain things that they censor from the websites. I've been around the world. You go there, some things can't come to you. How is it that these things come to us on our websites?
What's your theory?
My theory is that our government is allowing these things to be seen in order to keep. We make money off of this. There's a lot of money in this thing.
So what would you do?
Personally,
yeah.
I'm not that skilled to know what the president should do in this regard. But my more concern is why they still have crack houses in my neighborhood. You know, after 20, 30 years, and anybody comes in the neighborhood, after a day or two, they know where the crack houses is, but the FBI doesn't. They can find Saddam Hussein in a hole and find him with all this money, but they can't find the crack houses in my neighborhood and stop that from happening. I think that there's something going on. They can, like this, they're focusing, or whoever was saying that this guy came, Omar Mateen, and he was at my school, yet they don't find out that this guy was a graduate from the police academy, had licensed weapons, and even got some weapons from a police officer a couple of days before this whole incident. They don't want to arrest that guy or investigate this guy. You know, I think there's oxymoronic. I don't know what the government should do, but I know what I would like to see them do.
What is that?
I would like to see them focus on our issues. I would like to see them educating police officers so they stop killing black people in our country here, and so they can engage them without feeling threatened. That's something that I would like.
Do you think all police are against black people?
No, I don't think all police. Yeah, about 1 out of 25, or something like that. But I sure as hell don't trust them. And I've never had an experience that I could say that I really felt comfortable. I've been overseas in Europe, and when you're around the police, you don't feel threatened like that. I've been in Africa and in Japan. Like I said, you don't feel, well, in Japan you do feel intimidated by the police, but in Africa and stuff, the police don't approach you that same way. There's a certain amount of humanity that they deal you with. Here, they deal with you like you are already a criminal, and you're already, so you don't feel comfortable. Those are the issues that I focus on.
All right, how would you have prevented Mateen? How could that have been prevented? What was that?
How can you guys really do a disjustice to the police when you come out and say what could they have done to prevent it?
I'm not just saying the police. I'm not saying the police. I mean, 49 people have been slaughtered, and we're now trying to sort of reverse engineer this to find out exactly why he did it. And
we don't even know why he did it, though. How can we find out why he did it when he's dead?
I think they're going. Well, first of all, they're going to go through all his cell phone,
okay,
his computer to see what he's been reading.
That's fair.
And I say if, it's just investigation, if it turns out that it looks like it's fueled by something from ISIS, what do we do?
That's above my pay grade. I'm not that knowledgeable in how to respond to those type of things. You know what?
But we need your thoughts. We need your views.
Really, half of knowledge to say I don't know. I don't know. I do know this, that we should start doing some, at the mosque that I was going to, they started bringing in psychologists to talk to the people because of this. Everybody was traumatized. We are traumatized as a nation. And I think that what the government should first and foremost do is start de-traumatizing us. Okay? You keep pushing that button, people are going to be on the wire, and it's going to be spin tight. I think they need to turn around.
How do you do that?
You start dealing with people with their humanity and stop sensationalizing and making it seem like we could have done something. And look at countries like Sweden. Everybody has a gun. But there's nobody killing each other like that.
Why?
Because they treat each other with love. They treat each other like respect.
Well, what's the difference here then? Tell me how.
We don't have respect. Everybody's arrogant. It's all about me and what I can do and being sarcastic. We promote these types of attitudes, and we think it's funny, and then we blame. We're real separated. We're separated with this, and we don't use these things to pull us together. We use them to separate each other.
How has President Obama done? Separate or pull us apart?
Obama, mashallah. And as a Negro, I'm very happy to see that we had a Negro president. So that's number one. Number two, he's killed a lot of people, and that's frightening, So I couldn't say what he should do. I'm not in his position, but international politics, on a national front, we need to heal. I don't know if he can do anything because he's in his last, what they call it, the lame duck portion of his thing, so power to him in that regard. But whoever comes in next, they got to do something to focus on getting us to calm down instead of being at odds. Because you know what? What's going to happen? We're going to keep getting tense. We're going to keep getting tense, and then it's going to pop. And when it pops, it's going to be a whole bunch of wasteful killing. And people, why? For what? We're supposed to be the most civilized, advanced culture in the planet, and that's what we do. That shows that we have a problem when our children are going to schools and killing their classmates. Can we stop that? We haven't been able to. There's the problem, and the problem is in the heart. I think that we should come to Islam. That's what I suggest to people to do. Read the Quran. The Quran, it'll purify their heart.
I get back to the stoning of the women. I got to tell you, I got a real problem with that one. I got a real problem with that one.
It's not just the women. Stone the guys too.
I know, but I'm saying that look, I'm being facetious, but I see things like I see an American journalist get his head cut off. I see gay men being pushed off buildings. I see the Yazidis being round up and not allowed to go to their property.
What are the Yazidis?
It's a group in Iraq, the Yazidis. I've been to Iraq and I've seen the people in long lines leaving Iraq, afraid of ISIS in Syria, returning to Iraq to refugee camps. I've seen that with my eyes.
I don't have an excuse or any type of justification about what happens overseas or in that particular place. But it's bleeding here, and it's bled into Europe. It's bled into Paris. It's bled into Belgium. And that's the problem. And there are killings here, and I know there are a lot of other killings for other reasons, but there are killings here where people say that they're doing it for Allah. That's the problem. And like I said, personally, I know some Muslim scholars who have been focusing on those issues, and they can pretty much probably respond better than I can. As an Islamic scholar, my focus is on tafsir, which is explaining the Quran and teaching the Arabic language. That's what I've been focusing on, and children. Teaching children the things they need to know before they become adults. I don't look sideways because those other issues usually get you in trouble. So that's been my main focus.
Under your focus, can other religions coexist with Islam?
Of course, they always have.
No, I'm just checking to see what the tolerance level is.
No, of course. If we look at historically, the other religions, Christianity and Judaism, have thrived under Muslim governments. All the time. It's mad. Really, when the Crusades came, the Redlecks, they were called the Redlecks because when they came into Jerusalem, they killed all the Christians, Jews, and the Muslims they could find. When I say the Christians, those that were not Trinitarians, those that were holding to monotheism, were murdered along with the Christians and the Muslims, and they piled the masjid or the mosque up with Muslims, ran pigs into the synagogue, and set the buildings on fire. The Muslims weren't doing that. So. And then you look at Andalusia or old Spain. When the Moors, the Muslims ruled Spain, the Christians and the Jews thrived during that time. It was only afterwards that the Spanish Inquisition started, when the Christians took over again and started to slaughter anyone who was not under their type of Trinitarian law. So if you want to know, can you live in Islam and live in an Islamic country or a Muslim country and not be forced to become Muslim? You can.
Can Muslims live in a Christian country comfortably?
We're looking at that now. That's what the future will see. We're doing it right now, but we're running into a lot of discrimination. Is that fair to say? We get targeted. We get pulled off the lines at the airport. You get no flies because your name is Muhammad, or something like that. There's a lot of Islamic phobia out there.
Well, what about, let me ask you what your thoughts are on 9/11.
9/11. What do you want me to ask? What are you asking about?
Well, the fact that, there are a lot of Muslims, 19 of them.
Well, what I
19 out of 19.
19 Muslims, you're saying?
Yeah.
I did some research on 9/11, and a number of those people were still alive. A number of those 19 were still alive and actually weren't on the flight. Okay?
Okay.
There was a few of those people, so that might have been a mistake on their part, or just on the naming on the list. Also, I was in New York at the time, and a lot of people saw that building. I'm, again, of a person that I don't believe that, what's the guy's name? Osama bin Laden had anything to do with that.
Now, you don't think he had anything to do with it?
Now, I know that's a strange statement.
I know, so I'm going to ask you about that, but okay.
Okay, and the reason why, you want to ask or can I say?
No, you can say. No,
okay.
Go ahead.
The reason why is Osama bin Laden seemed like a very bold individual. and he didn't seem at all browbeat or intimidated by the United States. Okay, his brother was in business with Bush and actually died on his farm. You know, in one of Bush's planes. You know, that's how he died. His brother died. So their families.
I don't know about that, but okay.
Yeah. Hussein bin Laden died on Bush's farm in Texas on a flying incident. But my point
I know nothing about that.
Okay, well, that shows that they knew each other. Their families knew each other, if not the two of them. So when Clinton threatened bin Laden, he came out on TV, and I was living in Mauritania, and he came out on TV. He took a whole week worth of TV.
Who's he? Bin Laden?
Bin Laden.
Yeah.
And prime time, like 6 o'clock when everybody's eating and everything like that. And he gave his history, and he said that he didn't do it. He said he didn't care who did it. He wasn't afraid to say that, you know, he didn't do it. And he said if he did do it, he wouldn't be as scared to do it. And he put out a hit on President Clinton. It's a very bold. He said he put out money on me. I put out money on him. And he starts talking like this. Now, a guy that talks like that, if he did it, he would say, hey, I did it. So to the day that he died, he kept denying that he had anything to do with it, even though he didn't care about it. So I'm saying, you know, it didn't make sense that he.
Well, you have to admit, taking a hit on the president of the United States.
It's bold. It's bold.
Well, I don't think it's bold. I mean, I think it's a crime. I mean, I think it's obnoxious. I think it's terrorism. I think it's all that stuff. But go ahead.
I mean, we killed Saddam Hussein. Was that terrorism? We killed Muammar Gaddafi.
We didn't kill Hussein. He was tried in Iraq. But let me go back to 9/11. Let me go back to 9/11.
Okay.
So you think, go back to your theory on 9/11.
I think, I don't know who did it, but I just don't think Osama bin Laden was the actual guy. I think he was used as a scapegoat, you know. I still don't understand why we went to Iraq, since if we do say the 19 people, none of them were Iraqi.
Well, a lot of Americans object to that invasion.
Yeah, I mean, none of them.
A lot of Americans.
They were our allies from Egypt and Saudi.
So who did 9/11?
I have no idea. I'm not saying I have the answers.
But here's the problem: is that of the 19 who we say did 9/11, right? How many were Muslims?
I don't know.
More than one?
No, because a person has an Arab name doesn't make a Muslim.
No, I got that, but I'm just saying, how many? What do you think that they're Christians with Arab names?
A lot of Christians with Arab names.
That's what you think these were.
Okay. Do you know?
I don't
think there are Arab Jews?
Yeah, yes. I don't think you're going to get anyone to. I'm just trying to figure out.
I'm not trying to win converts.
No.
You just asked me my position. I just don't think Osama bin Laden did.
No, I mean, I went back to a real flashpoint in the United States, which is when all of a sudden we wake up one day and we're attacked by 19 people, and they're all, as I understand it, they're all Muslims, and that it's against the United States. So it was an act of war.
You know, it's only an act of war. Now we're talking legally now, okay?
I don't know if it's even legally, but I take it morally legally.
Because legally it would not be an act of war unless it was a country. Unless it was a country, a nation.
That doesn't matter. I mean, okay.
See, it does make a difference. That's when you guys go wrong.
No, when you kill 3,000,
you get people all hyped up and everything like that.
I think when you kill 3,000 Americans, you attack them like that. It's an act of war, or it's morally a war. I don't care what you say.
And if we say that, then that's when we get into the schizophrenia. If we say that, then we're saying the same thing they say. Right? Because they're saying that America bombed their country and killed their people. So is that an act of war?
What should we have done?
You know, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the reasoning, if we use that reasoning that you just stated, that we should take it as an act of war morally because some individuals came and blew up the World Trade Center. We should now go and take that as act of war and attack them. And I'm saying that's the exact same thing some of the terrorists are saying. A lot of the times you find.
So what would you have done?
No, I'm not. Just because.
How do you justify that?
Justify? Why are you asking me to justify things? I don't have to justify
you're saying that because one side does it, the other side does it, one side does it, the other side.
No, I'm just saying how insane the world is. I'm not saying I have the solution. I said that this insane mentality that we should go and kill indiscriminately other people. No, we have to find those culprits.
All right. In your studies online, are you finding any organizations, any part of the Muslim world that is saying that the United States should be attacked, Americans should be killed?
I told you my focus
is on your own. I know, but I think
no,
that's
my focus is on the Quran,
right, and
on teaching the Quran in the Arabic language, and like I said, the usul. The usuls come from classical works.
But are others doing that? But other organizations or other leaders doing that? Other Muslim scholars?
There's a group called CARE. It's called the Council of American Islamic Relations. Those guys focus on the American Islamic relations and things like that. My dealings with non-Muslims are very minimal. Okay, I very rarely did, besides the members of my family.
No, but do you go online?
I go online, but I teach to Muslims.
But when you go online, do you ever read what others are saying online?
No.
You never go, like you don't go to see what al-Baghdadi and ISIS is putting out online?
No.
Never have?
Never have. I'm not interested.
Never?
I don't live in Baghdad. You know? I don't live in Iraq. I don't really care. You know, what they're doing. It has nothing to do with my quality of life.
Right. So bottom line, if I can sort of summarize our discussion here, which is going, is that you have your own seminary.
Yes, ma'am.
Mateen had nothing to do with your seminary.
Mateen never met us. We never knew him. He never signed up and never did anything.
That people are saying it, but that's false.
Yes, ma'am.
And you are getting hate mail as a consequence.
Yes, ma'am. And threats.
And threats. I take it you disavow the violence in Nepal.
And our heart is with the victims and their families. You know, it's something, whoever did that, this person, he cannot just use Islam as a justification for his own sadistic, you know, animalistic behavior. You know, whoever did that is truly inhumane.
So you condemn him?
I don't condemn him. I condemn the activity.
Why don't you condemn him?
Because, we learn, and it's part of Islam, we don't hate people. We hate their crimes, okay? The sons of Adam, we can condemn the activities of the sons of Adam, but we don't hate people, you know? Because the person, now that he's dead, he's going to get what he got coming. We believe in a just God, and Allah is going to get everybody and requite them for what they did. We hate his activities.
And if I can, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the reason he did this is not because he's a radical, it's not because of radical Islam, but it's because of his background with police training.
No.
Okay.
I didn't mean it to sound like that. If I can clarify, I said that, you know, if we want to use a reason, we can't use that he is radical Islam or devout Muslim. Okay. I mentioned that he was a cop. You know, he graduated from the police academy in 2006, and we know these guys. Well, I know from my experience, a lot of these guys are very aggressive. And we see that borne out in the statements of those people who met him. His aggressive, his mean-spiritedness, and it's scary how they describe him. Everybody describes him as his taker, you know? And that's how he's described. And that, to me, is indicative of what I've seen in a lot of cops, how they deal with people, you know? So that's what I'm saying.
So it's just sort of a coincidence that he's Muslim, is what you're saying?
No, I mean, I guess so. I guess you would say that it's a coincidence.
And it's only a coincidence that he's in a gay club, which has, and that the Quran has spoken against gay love.
No, I would say more than that. I'm saying that he was in a gay club because he liked to be around homosexuals. Okay, and reason why I say that is because he'd been in a gay club for at least 3 years. And as one of the gay members of the club said, he was there partying with them, drinking with them. And he said other people, one person said, what do you say about him being disgusted about seeing two men kiss? He said, that's just ludicrous. And he said, that's crock, you know? That's the language the person used. Because he was with us and we did more than that in front of him. Indicative that they probably had intercourse in front of him and he was with us. He didn't have a problem with that. Other people have intimated that he asked them out romantically, you know. So I don't think that he had a problem with homosexuality. However, I think I would wait to judge until the investigators pull his phone up and see what they have to say about him. As for the statement as him being in ISIS, hey, he might have been in ISIS.
Does that change it for you?
For me,
what if it turns out he said that he at some time in the 911 call he said he pledged allegiance to ISIS? I mean, what are we supposed to think from that?
I tell you what, if he pledged allegiance to ISIS, then we got to take that up with ISIS or with him. But the thing about it, the thing that's good for me is that I just want to clarify that he didn't come through me.
Right, he's not you. I'm just saying, I'm taking big picture. I got it, big picture. But do you condemn ISIS?
I don't know ISIS. I don't know.
You
know, I live in a bubble.
Well, ISIS is bragging about this stuff.
I heard that.
Okay, so don't you condemn that?
Yes.
Okay.
I do condemn anybody who gets pleasure out of the murder of any people. So if ISIS, and I haven't read it myself, but I'm taking what you said.
I'm taking it from what I've heard. Is that he pledged allegiance to ISIS, and ISIS on many occasions has taken credit for terrorist acts around the globe.
Then they're terrorists in that regard. And you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When that's true, then I condemn them as well. The reason why I'm just hesitant is because, like I said before, Normally, when we get this information, we don't know if it's
Got
true
it. I
or not.
totally agree. It's early in the investigation. It's only a couple days out. Got it.
But
totally.
no, I'm even saying about ISIS, and I specifically don't look up those groups because I just had a whole bunch of problems, with the FBI. So I don't even want to get online and look and see what these guys said, because like I said, I'm not interested in joining. All right, I'm focusing on raising my family and raising ignorance off those that are around me the best that I can. So I teach from 7 in the morning to 9:30 at nighttime. Okay, I start my last class and I have breaks in between there. After that, I find time for my 2 wives and my children.
15 of them.
15 of them.
And you support all 15?
Well, I've 14. One is grown and out the house.
But you took responsibility for all of them?
Of course, they're my children. I raised them. All of them are in my home.
Okay.
My children. Alhamdulillah. So, I raise my children, and that's a big responsibility. What ISIS does, how far is ISIS from here?
So you have no idea what ISIS puts out there? You don't read anything that ISIS puts out there?
Not even once. I've never even, I don't think they have an English station, but I just know they have a website, But I know nothing about what they say.
You just ignore them?
Totally. What's the best way to get at a fool? You ignore a fool, right? That's the hardest thing against a fool is to ignore him. What do they have to offer me?
If ISIS is inflicting terrorism around the world, I do believe they are, what should we do?
Again, I'm not the president. I'm not a
I know, but
general.
you're a smart guy, and you've thought about it. You are a Marine.
Right.
You joined the Marines in what year?
And those people who threaten my home should recognize that I'm a Marine.
I know. I pointed that out that you're a Marine.
Right.
But so you've thought about this. What? Give me an idea.
My whole mindset is to focus. I want to live the rest of my life raising my children and seeing my grandchildren.
Don't you want them to have a good world to live in?
And that's why, since we're American, I'm focusing here. My focus is here. I have like 9 daughters. And so I'm really into educating young men so that I can find a good one to marry my daughters. That's what my focus on. I really have no time for ISIS.
How about for politics? We thought about Trump or Clinton?
Trump or Clinton. I don't like either one.
Why? Let's start with Trump.
Trump, to me, and he's a New Yorker. Normally I like New Yorker, and I like some of his braggish, crazy ways. I like that about him. But Trump plays too much to the ignorance, and it's kind of like for getting people to do crimes and hurt other people. That's not good for the country. Like I just said, I think we need to be healing. So I don't think Trump is going to be a good president in that regard.
All right,
Okay?
Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton, as a Muslim, I object to Hillary Clinton. No, I don't believe a woman should be the president of a nation. As our Prophet ﷺ, he taught us that whenever a woman is in charge, there's going to be problems. What if she's on her menses and it's time to go to war? She's going to press the button because she's angry? I don't believe that she should be put in that position. We're still debating whether a woman should be in the battlefield with men, and we're going to make a woman a president? No way. She hid those records of her phone calls and stuff like that. No. People, when she was, what's that Whitewater thing? People on her staff decided to all of a sudden commit suicide. I don't trust Clinton at all. I don't trust this guy, Trump. I don't trust Clinton. But when you got these two places, where are you going to turn? I liked Bernie.
Why?
Bernie seemed honest. Real honest guy. Did he have all the answers? No. I didn't think he was going to win, but I liked him. I thought he was a better choice for America because I think he would have been more even-handed if he could. Big business doesn't allow those politicians to do much. And people need to recognize that. The president he's just a manager, right? He doesn't make all the decisions, So that's what I see about the two. Is there a third person? Is there anybody else?
Not right now.
So who are you going with?
What?
Oh, so
I'm a pedestrian. I walk.
Oh.
I walk. We live in tumultuous times, don't we?
Yes, we do. And we don't want to be honest. That's the thing about it. That's the whole thing. And I don't have no more time but to be honest. Okay? A lot of my time was wasted, so I focus on what I think is important. When I was in isolation for 3 years, I didn't care who was president. I didn't care what ISIS
How
was
did you
doing.
end up in that mess? I told you I wasn't. I told we discussed it before. I didn't want to go into it, but you bring it up.
Well, I just mentioned the point that.
Were you treated fairly?
No, I don't think I was treated fairly initially. At the end, I was. I think at the end when the federal judge looked at all the evidence. See, I'll give you an example. When we essentialize things, then that looks crazy. But then when we take our time and go through it, then it doesn't look so crazy. And I thank Allah that the judge, and then I thank that judge also, Gregory Presnell, for taking the time to go through all the evidence in order to say, okay, this is not
But
fair.
when you were transported, you were shackled. I mean, a lot of armored transport. Why was the government so afraid of you?
Because I do Tai Chi.
Now, why is the government afraid of you?
I think people are more afraid of your heart and your mind than your physical body.
Because they were afraid of you, right? I mean, they thought you were going to do really awful things, right?
I don't know. I mean, we have a legal system that the prosecutors have a lot of say in the pushing of a case, and we haven't changed that yet. So I can't really. I haven't spent a lot of time focusing on it. But I was going to say that when I was in ISO, when I was in isolation for that period of time, the only things I focused on was like, what's going to make me happy, my children, and educating them. And so since I came out, that's what I've been focusing on. My children, my family, my parents. I love my parents.
So you're not bitter?
No, that's a waste of time. Bitter about what? Allah teaches us in the Quran that Allah is not going to make the good deed of a person go to waste. Any harm that you get in this world is going to wipe away some sins that you did, or it's going to be a good deed for you in the hereafter. And I believe in the hereafter. So I'm not bitter. Bitter about what?
Do you think the federal government is suspicious of you?
Of course they're suspicious.
Why are they suspicious of you?
I don't know. I can't answer all the questions. Just because I know something doesn't mean I know why. I think it's a waste of time.
Let me ask Dan, you're a lawyer. Dan, why are they suspicious of him?
They're suspicious of him because, as he points out, there's a tremendous amount of power in the Department of Justice and in the federal prosecutors in this country, and he would not do what they wanted him to do. And because he would not do what they wanted him to do, they were scared of him and suspicious of him.
What did they want from him? No?
We're pedestrians.
Yeah.
We're pedestrians, okay.
We
All right.
have to take
Got it, okay.
Yeah. We really can't go into that because it bears on matters that are beyond the scope of this interview and really not relevant, but suffice it to say that he would not bend to their will.
Imam, thank you for talking to me.
I really appreciate you having me back.
I was happy to learn this stuff, and I hope that we can talk again.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
I know we don't agree on some political things.
Yeah, there are a lot of things you and I don't agree on. That's true, but I think sometimes talking is a really smart thing to do.
And I like to say that we don't always have to agree. And that's what I think. That's what I think Americans should understand. They don't have to have the same politics.
But I think that when we get to violence, there's a big difference there. That's a big difference. It's one thing not to agree on how to solve a problem, but when it comes down to people being hurt, and we do see a lot of Americans being beheaded, non-Americans being beheaded. I read today about a Canadian who was beheaded in the Philippines by a radical Islam group. I mean, what am I supposed to think?
I have no idea. Like I said.
Do you understand why that would disturb me? Do you understand why reading about a Canadian being beheaded today by a radical Islam group in the Philippines is disturbing?
I guess, once I stop to think about it just this very moment, my first thought is about Guantanamo Bay.
But that's the everything I raise, you say, well, this is something worse that somebody else has done.
Okay,
and the thing is that it's like everything will go on forever with that type of attitude. But when you hear about a Canadian being beheaded,
what's different about a Canadian than an Iraqi or anybody else?
I don't like anyone being beheaded.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say that we have a clique. When one instance we say we're amazed and it's atrocious I should say, finally got that word out. It's an atrocity that this person in Canadian nationalism is beheaded in Canada. Yet we hold hundreds of people hostage for all these years.
That's where
Hold on, can I finish?
Yeah.
Over there, and we say that we have a right to. We're saying the same thing those other people that we look at as being criminal. And I'm not saying either one is correct. I'm saying that if we don't want to, deal with that, we got to stop dealing the same way. We can't do the same things others are doing and saying they're wrong for doing the same thing we're doing. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's all wrong. And I'm saying that...
how do you stop it?
Well, like I said, first of all, come to Islam.
We went back there, right?
Hey, read the Quran.
You come to Islam, you won't let me do anything. I don't have the rights that a man has.
That's not true.
Women have to be covered up more.
You have more rights. You have more rights than men do.
Women have to be covered up more.
They do have to be covered up more because they're more beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, look, you and I, let's not even go down the women route.
Okay.
You and I, we'll be here for 2 hours.
You know what? Women have
or
more
longer.
rights in Islam than they do in the
They get
West.
stoned for adultery.
That's so the
We're
men
back
get
to that.
stoned too. Men get stoned for it
Well,
too.
how come I never see that?
Those men are not doing it right if they're doing it just on the women.
All right, well, anyway.
You know, well, I was going to say that personally, I don't believe that we all have to agree on the same things, but we do have to agree on our that we have to live together.
But don't we have an obligation to protect somebody? Take this Canadian as an example, who was just beheaded. Don't we have an obligation to try to protect him from being beheaded?
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Let's say that somebody is from the Philippines, because he was beheaded in the Philippines.
Right.
Let's say that in Guantanamo Bay, there's somebody from the Philippines being held there. Would that person in the Philippines be right to say, I'm going to behead this person because the United States and Canada, let's say they blame Canada too, is holding my cousin or my...
No, I don't think that's right.
You know, so then if you don't think that's right, then it's not right for us to go and do something to somebody else.
I think if ISIS put down the proverbial sword and stop hurting people and killing people, I think you'd see the United States talking to them.
You know what? Iraq has been a place of war for thousands of years.
Long time.
You know, and the wars and the things that they've been fighting for, you know, may be covered in Islam, but most of the time it's just politics. You know, and it's not our politics. You know, that place is overwrought with different types of organizations and groups, more than you can possibly count. You go to Jerusalem and Lebanon, the place is overrunning with different factions. Why are we dealing with that? When
You mean Americans?
Us Americans. We are all the way over here.
Well, for one thing, you and I are going back in a circle.
Because, like I said, you see my focus. See, before you can go over there, we have to clean up our own house.
I don't think we got to the point where we can only look at ourselves here in the United States. I think that there's so much that bleeds over from other nations. I mean, we even have Americans who are killed in terrorist attacks overseas.
Are there attacks? Does Sweden have any terrorist attacks?
Paris does.
Not Sweden, though.
No, but
because they're neutral. They're not involved in those countries.
So you think that's what it is?
I think if we look at the
What's
evidence,
what's Belgium done? I guess they house NATO. Is that your thinking?
I don't know, but if we look at the countries,
how about the Philippines? What are the Philippines?
Philippines is a huge Muslim nation.
Well, that's my point. They just beheaded the Canadian.
Right, but they've been fighting. I was in the Philippines. The Catholics were fighting the Protestants. The Protestants were fighting the Muslims, and the Muslims and those guys, they were fighting the Marines. And I mean, the whole place was in war in the 80s.
All right, let's get back to this. Okay.
You know, I'm just saying.
All right. So Mateen is not one of your followers. He's never been to your seminary. Never been online, as far as you know.
Period. We know.
Period. Nothing. No. Have you checked?
Yes, we double checked.
Okay, double checked. You are getting threats
and death threats.
And people in the media are falsely reporting that Mateen is part of it.
They're promoting, terrorism because the people are terrorizing us, and we asked them to stop. We don't have anything to do. We're pleading with you. We didn't have anything to do with this. Our heart goes out to the victims. And we didn't ever train this guy, never met him, and he's not a student of ours.
And you condemn the act, but you don't condemn him, Mateen, because of your religion.
On religious grounds, we condemn acts. We don't condemn people. We hate the act. We don't hate the person.
And you hate this act.
And we hate this act. This is not the act that can be justified by Islam, okay, at all.
Thank you. And I was going to shake your hand, but we don't do that. You and I have decided we don't do that. Anyway, but
thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much. Very nice talking to you.
Thank you, Greta.